Welcome back, listeners to the T.R.O.N podcast, The Randomness of Nothing. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have a very special guest, halfway across the world, successful entrepreneur, businessman, podcaster, Mr. Roy Colin. Thank you very much for your time, sir.
Thank you very much for having me. Looking forward to the conversation.
It's a blast. You know, your history is very multi-layered and very, very rich with a lot of different successes to it. And it started out as a very young age. You know, you were delivering newspapers, washing cars, and you started your businesses very early. So tell me about your entrepreneurial journey for the show, please.
I mean, as you said, yeah, it's like 9. I actually started washing cars and I was doing gardening work. And I realized, you know, somebody was like, we went around saying Bob a job, which is kind of like scouts, but we weren't in the scout. And I remember somebody paid us like 25 cents for doing gardening work for a few hours, and they gave us a chocolate bar. And I was like, I don't like this. And that kind of continued even to this date for gardening. So you learn at an early age what you like and what you don't. At 11, done a newspaper round.
Yeah.
Yeah, just started. I mean, I'd done that up to college, enjoyed that. With the money from
sure.
that at 14, bought a lawnmower, went around going cutting grass and everything. And then around 18, I was doing motorbikes. I was into motorbikes and I got a few motorbikes bought and sold. And just on kind of learning journey as well for the entrepreneur, because I was still kind of doing the gardening work because I was making good money. You know, you just as you go. So I decided we could cut hedges. And I mean, we must have looked like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So we were driving along with a motorbike with a petrol hedge cutters. I mean, and we decided we knew what we were doing. And we went around and we asked somebody. I remember even the price. We said £30. We cut our hedge. Yeah. And it ended up being like a zigzag. And she threatened to call the police. So that was the end of my hedge cutting career. That was another lesson. I started working in a bar, kind of clearing the glasses and emptying the kegs and things like that. But the money, it was Irish money at the time before we switched over to the euro, but it was £1 an hour. And I was like, you're working late and everything. And I was like, this is really not good. Like, and most of the people working there, they were just robbing drinks. And that's not my style. I'm not a thief. So, you know, I think that's why they didn't. I mean, they were working behind the bar. They might have been getting $4 or something like that. But it was still, it was poor money. I asked for $1.50. He didn't give it to me. So I left. And I learned my worth as well. It's like, I'm not going to work for such crappy money. And I studied construction economics and management. And when I got out of college, that was in 93, I did a diploma. I thought I'd walk into a job. And there was a kind of lull period at that time. I remember we call them Dear John letters, where you're writing to try to get a job. Piles of thanks, but no thanks. And I remember I had an interview for Logitech and they said, you're overqualified. And I was like, I just want a job. But eventually I done another course, construction site supervision, and it was a government organization, and they were just doing all Foxers, which is like Nixers, but for themselves. It was so corrupt. I mean, like all government institutes. So they were getting us to price jobs, do all different stuff. They were obviously making money. We weren't. And they had a computer, and I asked your man, I said, will you get a CAD book, AutoCAD? And it was like AutoCAD 12 at the time. And I read it from cover to cover. Then they gave us work experience. I started working for the city, doing road design. And the strange thing is, there was architects working for this company, and CAD was coming in, and they hadn't a clue. Whereas I knew all the tips and tricks, so they were all coming to me.
Right,
your
expertise.
The money wasn't great. It was like $100 a week. And in the end, I ended up working for a mechanical contractor away from my city. But I lasted with them maybe 8.5 years. I kind of worked my way up to contracts manager. I was running multi-million-pound jobs. Really enjoyed it. Hired a lot of people. And then went for another company as a regional manager for 3.5 years. And during the time of the first company, I set up another business doing internet web design with a guy. And it was working okay. Then I kind of, like, everybody started doing it and the prices dropped. So I just kind of walked away from that one as well. But always kind of entrepreneurial. Started getting into property. I had a few properties. I had 3 properties in Ireland. And then I started dating a Polish girl. When I went over, I said, property's cheap here. Started getting a few. And then I saw an opportunity because it was a time, I think it was around 2004. Everybody was kind of buying, if you'd a pulse, you were buying something. Yeah. And I set up a company basically it was for Irish investors to buy stuff in Poland. But as it turned out, I was getting English and American. And I eventually moved there. The relationship ended. So I had to move or I would have lost everything. But I was building apartments. I was building houses. I was managing.
I heard about that.
Properties. Yeah. I built a lot there. And obviously, then I kind of, not everything works out in life.
Well, yeah, I think the world came to a screeching halt in 2008 with factors beyond everybody's control when that in fact took place, and I thought, and I don't want to overtalk your story, but when, you go from Ireland to Poland to managing properties, I mean, you always, for lack of a better term, were a hustler. So it always just sort of navigated different spaces. And even if things didn't work out, like, your Texas Chainsaw Massacre story, right? Ultimately, you pivoted really quickly. So what's the benefit of pivoting really quickly from things don't work and not really like mulling on failures?
I think it's, I always say when you're driving, don't look in the rear view mirror because you're not going in that direction. Because
right.
And the thing is, when you're mulling, you're not in creative mode, and it's hard. I mean, it's not that it didn't hurt me. I mean, I got wiped out. Like, I got seriously wiped out. And it took a while. I was doing well, but others kind of took me down with them. But the thing is, it was always, one investor had said to me, he said, money solves all problems. And it's a good thought process, because you can be trying to squeeze the pennies and try to do everything in. But if you start creating something that gives you lots of money, it solves all the things that you're trying to squeeze the pennies on.
Right.
And the mindset is, like, everything is a people business.
For sure it is.
And sometimes
100%.
people think, oh, I'm an accountant, I'm a solicitor, I'm this, I'm that. A lot of people hate what they're doing, but they think because that's all they've done, they can't change. And no matter what business you've done, if you're able to get on with people, if you're able to negotiate, that carries across to any business you do.
Right.
So that way, you're not afraid to try it. And you can bring people in to have the skill set, or you can know, listen to podcasts, read books.
Correct.
You can learn about things fast if you put the energy into it.
Well, it's funny you say that, right? Because the amount of people that I've gotten a chance to talk to on this show have varying different backgrounds, skill sets, and needs. But the story and the linear, there's a path that these people have all done, irregardless of what field of work they went in. And if you're a good listener, if you're knowledgeable, if you're willing to take knowledge, ask questions, and learn, you can kind of watch a documentary of just about anything if you're willing to listen to it, right? And so one of the reasons I started the show was to talk to people like yourself. I can't speak on certain topics in detailed expertise, but to get to your point, if you're willing to listen and you study it, that's when you start filling in those gaps of what you didn't know. Right. And you have to put in the effort. Learning is an effort. Listening is an effort. Right. Talking is easy. Right. Anybody can ramble on for days and hours on end, but it takes a true skill set to actually learn and listen. So how did you end up navigating to where now you're a podcast host and you're one of the top podcasters in the world with all the skills that you've gotten over your life?
So it kind of came to where I got wiped out with this. It took a while to go. So I was after making $1 million. I was looking to make about 5 million because I was building 30 apartments. I had a lot of stuff going on. I was doing okay. And everything then started to kind of fall apart because the syndicates I put together, they ran out of money. And they were big. I was a small boy in a lot of the syndicates. They got wiped out. And businesses. And it's, and then everyone they just fight their own battles. They just walk away, which, at the time you're kind of going, let me hold the crying baby. But that's, you look after your own house, and I understand it. That's
right.
So when everything fell down, usually with a limited liability company, you wash your hands and you just brush yourself off and go again. And I had a lot of companies, and I was the president, and you're personally liable as the president. So I was personally liable for about 5 million. Yeah, instead of making 5 million, I went the opposite direction. I was gonna, through that, then I saw so much corruption. I cleared it because I got it sorted eventually. It took a bit of time, but got it sorted.
Obviously, you're sitting here as a result, so obviously things, but geez,
But I saw so much corruption, like bailiffs working with valuers, devaluating a property. The valuers bribing people in a room so they had their own cronies buying the property. And there was just so much. And I had over 100 court cases, and I just saw judges corrupt. I just saw corruption at so many levels. So I went to an event when I had the decks cleared and was like, what's your quest? And I was like, all right, I need to expose this, because unfortunately, when people go through these situations, not only do relationships break, sometimes unfortunately people throw in the towel, and it's like, no, this shouldn't happen. This is orchestrated by the powers that be. And I want to expose it. But there was 2 people at the thing that were brilliant speakers. I hated public speaking, even though I was working for the mechanical contracting company. Like, I'd often be in a room with 20 people, an architect, the builder, the client and everything, electrical contractors, and my voice was I used to hate it. So I said, I have to overcome this. Came back and I said, I'm going to join Toastmasters, because I was so brave. I had to bring people with me. They said, this is great. I said, yeah. And they said, but we haven't time for it. And I was too shy to go back on my own. And the only reason I joined was a new one was opening a few months later. And I said, all right, everyone's going to be new. I'm going. And they said, do you want to sign up? Yeah. Are you going to speak next week? Yeah. And I just kind of went all in.
Autopiloted.
I just went all in. Then I went to the one that I was afraid to kind of go again on my own, joined that, formed my own club, International Entrepreneurs, and I became a coach. I became a distinguished Toastmaster within 3 years. I saw that. Yeah. And I done open TEDx, open comedy, and I just entered loads of competition. And I just went from one extreme to the other. And it's an important thing because I had a crutch and I'm shy or I don't like to speak in public. And so many people have some sort of crutch. They say that because we've told ourselves a story and we believe that story. And it's like, I'm living proof that you can change that.
Right. Well, I think the interesting thing about, you can get in your own head about perceptions about yourself, and comedy is a lot harder than drama, right? Because when making people laugh and eliciting emotion from people, and I'm not dissing anybody who's in the medium of that level of entertaining, but actually getting people to laugh is very, very hard. And then the second part about it is too, is like you start seeing people stiffen their lip, they start sitting in their chair, and then you have to, I can only imagine trying to get people to laugh. You may be melting inside in real time. Like, man, is anything I'm going to say start landing, because I couldn't even imagine trying to get people to, I've been to comedy shows. I've been to successful ones, right? Like, some successful US comedians, and what they have to do to think of original material for, an hour and a half is absolutely mind-blowing. So kudos to you for being able to do that and to continue success in that medium. But so you're doing these Toastmaster events, like, is it local? And you became the president, like you became pretty high up in it, didn't you? You're like
the president of my club. I wasn't the president of Toastmasters. But
Okay.
Like I was coach of a club in Finland, and like the club I founded, I was the president. Then I wanted other people to do it, but they didn't want it. And I was kind of driving on, and like there's different roles. You can be like, say, the Toastmaster of the evening. So you could have 20 members, you might have 30 in some clubs.
Right.
But when you're a Toastmaster, you're like chairing the meeting and you decide the topic for 2 hours. And then you might have 3 speakers. You'll have table topics, which is like you just call some up and you just say something. They must talk for 2 minutes. And I became very good at that for some reason. But evaluating was another one. So if you were a speaker, I'd evaluate you. I waited 6 months to do that because I was still kind of nervous to do it. But once I started doing it, because I was watching different things, people started asking me to evaluate them. Over 10 people asked me to be their mentor. Because I'd watch different things. Plus, a lot of times people have a system where they go, a hamburger kind of thing. They say, nice, a bit of information. I just say it as it is. I'd go through the speech and I'd even spot someone's feet kind of doing that or some sort of twitch or something. And I'd say, but I'd always do it in a nice way. And then they'd ask me to do it again. Or even if I wasn't the evaluator, they'd say, hey, would you mind making some notes for me? And even if you, like when I recorded all my speeches, I was watching them just to see how I was performing, the different things that if I saw some kind of flaw, but also sometimes just listen. You can put the phone down and just listen, and it's different. Sometimes turn off the sound and just watch.
Right.
So if you want to improve, you just do a few things.
Right.
And you start benefiting from it.
So who's inside of a Toastmaster? Is it professionals? Is it professional comedians? Is it people who do this on the side? Like,
every walks of life.
Really?
There was people that are working for corporations. You could even have someone that's unemployed. There was even a guy that you're supposed to be 18. There's kind of ones for schools as well. There's a different setup for younger people, but you're supposed to be 18. There was one guy, he was 16 and he joined under his dad's name. And I was so impressed with him. Like I even got him on my podcast. It was like, I just thought this is brilliant that a guy was doing. No, and the thing is, you actually make friends out of it. Like I've got great friends out of it. It wasn't something I was expecting. That wasn't the purpose of it. But you just bond because what happens is someone comes along. Like somebody come along and you see them terrified and you know what it's like. And then you see them evolving and it's so beautiful. And then you just see, like, you can have polished speakers, but without a heart. And when you see somebody that actually does something and they're really caring about people or they're doing something or they're trying to inspire, that's way better for me.
Well, it's funny because I've interviewed a professional musician and I said, I can't play an instrument to save my life, but I do. You can tell when somebody's autopiloting it, playing. Like there's a difference between somebody who can play and who's playing with conviction to enjoy an audience, right? And you've been to concerts and it's not about the music. It's about the experience, right? The music's just secondary, right? Yeah, you know the songs, you can recite the lyrics, but when the entertainer is involved with the audience, when they're singing along with the songs, and then we've seen clips of bad ones where the artist has basically packed it in, right? And they're just like, you're
like just recently, Timberlake, and he just kind of, I think we both could do that one.
Right. So you see, I mean, we've all seen those things. You're just like, geez, man, like, you charge this amount of money and that's the experience you gave people. People are like, they're going to dinner, they getting drinks afterwards, they're buying t-shirts, etc. And then you're just like, dang, you really pulled that on those people, huh? Like, wow. So you
just
also
on that actually, because with music and my brother, he learned piano. He is so talented. He's a brilliant singer. Like he hear a song, he can play it in 5 minutes.
That's amazing.
Like everything. I wanted to play guitar when I was 16, and I went to an instructor, and he was teaching me stuff I didn't like. He used to be looking out the window waiting for the hour to end because it was so bad. And it was
what a horrible experience.
What I say for that is, if you're thinking of doing it, make sure they're playing stuff you like and that you're enjoying it. And it's the same with languages and everything, because sometimes we think, oh, they know better than us. Make sure you're enjoying it, because if you enjoy it, you'll get better than anything. And that, whether it's a speaking coach, whether it's a language, anything. Make sure you connect with them.
Well, I do martial arts, and I have a black belt in Tong Soo Do, Korean karate. I've done other different styles as well too: Brazilian jiu-jitsu, taekwondo, Muay Thai. And to your point, if you don't enjoy it or you don't have a good coach, and I've been fortunate enough to have very good instructors, masters, it shows in their passion of teaching. Because if you don't have a good teacher, and I've seen about places that did not, I've read about places that did not, it's a very unfortunate experience, because you'll hear stories from people about what they took place, because, like, to your point of the looking out the window, to the instructor that's not engaged with their students, like, you have to be all in when you are providing a service to people, because we live in a duplicated society where people all have skill sets and can easily duplicate what you're doing right now. Whether it's property management, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a concert, a musician, like, you don't have the luxury of basically resting on your laurels if you're trying to build something, because it's too competitive out there. So my next question
I did Kung Fu for about 6 or 8 years, and going on one stage. Nice. At one stage, it was brilliant. It was with a lot of people, but it just fizzled away. There was only 4 of us. He didn't want money. He said, just pay for the hall.
Right.
And we were doing that for a few years. And I mean, the guy, and he was brilliant.
100%.
Like, it was like, I would still be doing it if I didn't move out of the city. It fell apart because I had to move away. We didn't have enough people to cover the hall.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. And those things happen, right? But, if it's a club, particularly if it's a club, that's when you're getting good training, because they're not in there to get rich. It's not franchised or anything like that. So what about Brain Gym, the mental fitness you're a co-founder of? So can we talk about that? I was very curious about that, because people often think, I lift weights, I run, I jog, but they're forgetting about the 6 inches upstairs.
Exactly. My business partner, Arnold, I'd recommend that actually that you'd have. He's a fascinating guy. He's doing it for about 25 years. He worked for KLM. He was managing about 6,000 people. But a lot of it is kind of, he's on about the stretcher, and it's kind of stuff that I have learned through my life, through kind of just trials and error. We try to fit in life. Like, when you're young, you're good when you do what your parents tell you. In school, do what you... And it's not necessarily you being you. It's not getting out of your creative zone. So there's a lot of that. It's like how to talk to people, making your mind work. Because, like, my grandmother, she lived to 3 weeks short of 96. She used to read. It's beautiful. She used crosswords.
Yeah.
A lot of times you talk to people, they don't do anything. So you have to work on your brain, work on your health. It's all mindset and just making sure you're looking after it. Instead of having a cupboard full of medication, you can look after yourself.
Without question.
It's a combination of things like that. Because, as you say, I mean, I was at the gym today. I love going to the gym. I enjoy it. But I make sure, I have my right vitamins. I eat as organically as possible.
For sure.
There's a lot to be doing. So that's what we're kind of combining and making sure that, health-wise, and
because people are stressed, their schedules are very compressed, and things are mentally taxing, whether it's family, work, balancing life, and oftentimes people get in a very whether it's depression, whether it's reaching a certain age bracket and necessarily not accomplishing the things that they thought they were going to accomplish. And so if you don't have a mental coach, and I think a lot of times mental became a stigma until just a couple of years ago. Right. So it wasn't something that was emphasized, but people who were really into the field are now being utilized for their services at a much higher level than it was before, because now it's okay to talk to somebody about what's going on upstairs.
And The thing is, the industry is heavily flawed because a lot of people are getting you in to have you as a patient for life, and shame on them. And people go there, they're just reliving their memory of what they've done, and then they come away and they're coming back again next week, or else they're being prescribed a lot of stuff that isn't helping either. And it's like, I think we have to, whether it's courts, because obviously experience, I think the white coat, a lot of times you have to kind of, your sovereignty comes from within, and you have to learn to trust yourself as well, trust your intuition, instead of just passing over. I mean, even with court cases, I mentioned I had 100 cases. Most of the ones I won were because of myself paying attention and watching what was going on. A lot of them I represented myself. But it's like most people, they just pass it to the solicitor or attorney, whatever they're called in each country, and they just let them do their job. And it's like, no, you have to look after your own.
You have to be engaged. Well, you know, like it's crazy. Like even if you go to the doctor, right? Like how often do we like autopilot it and just wait for the prescription to come from the pharmacy? You don't even look up the medication that it is. You don't look up the side effects. You don't look up whether it makes you drowsy or you have allergic reactions. You usually find out after something bad happens when you take that medication. And then 2 or 3 days later, you're like, man, I got nauseous, I got dizzy, I got et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then you look it up and you're like, dang, man, I wish I'd have looked that up before I said yes to just taking this pill. You know, maybe it would have been better if I would have I'm not saying that every pill is bad, but we don't do our homework until after the consequences took place because we think that the pill will solve everything, right, so to speak. And we trust.
I've learned so much because I read a lot on this. There's so much natural stuff out there, and it's all quashed. All the websites are being shut down. Or like I've had guests on as well. I mean, I've seen it. I've seen shadow banning, blocking, removal of stuff. They don't want that information out there because it's hurting their bottom dollar of the stuff they're doing.
For sure.
You just look after yourself, find out the information, start reading the book, start checking a few different things, ask people who's experienced this. Like social media is good in that way. Hey, I've got this. Anyone got any good suggestion? People will tell you. They'll say, hey, I've tried this. And if you see a comment, hey, just 10 people said they've tried this and it works. And it's a natural thing.
Right.
You know, it's a lot better than taking a med that might, as you say, loads of side effects.
And so I would love to talk about, you know, your podcasting career. So you've developed over 20 successful companies, been very, you know, you're highly acclaimed when it comes to your podcasting. How did you get into it? What was your approach? And how do you continue to have continued success in this medium?
I went to another event and a guy was doing a kind of an evening on starting a podcast. I never even thought about it. And I was like, ooh, and it was always for me, it was about exposing. And I was like, okay, I'd like to have a podcast on exposing. But I said, I'd probably be attacked. So the first one I done, it was in 2018, was the Speaking Podcast. Because I said, I've been on so many competitions with loads of people that will be guests. So that was an easy one for me. And then it just kind of evolved from there. I did a meditation one because through my journey, meditation really helped me. Kind of like the act of forgiveness, gratitude, things like that. And there was ones I was listening to and they became paid or they disappeared. And I was like, no, I want to have meditation and interviews as well. That's going to be free for all of us. And that was kind of I done a Learn Polish one. I mean, that's a kind of an example of when you're creating your podcast to do a nice graphic, because I wasn't really expecting it to be successful. So I did it with my ex-wife and I just set up the tripod, took a picture and then a crappy graphic. And it was like #1 ahead of Duolingo, it's got over 3 million downloads already, like, you know, between the audio and the video. And it's like, and then I changed it. I created a beautiful graphic afterwards. I mean, actually, you don't have the green screen on this one, but usually I'll have a green screen and I have the logos behind it. But what I say to people is make sure that the logo is actually decent, you know, no matter where you think it will go, it makes it different. Because what happens too is people, they'll create the graphic and they're looking at the computer. They go,
oh my gosh,
this looks great. But the thing is, it's a tiny little box when people are scrolling through the iTunes stores or the Spotify or something like that. Does it look good there? Do people know what it's about? Does it stick out? So you have to kind of, you know, navigate that. So like I've had a crypto. So like we were talking about knowing stuff and not. I understood a little bit of crypto, but I started getting a few books and I was like, this is gobbledygook. It's like none of them could explain. So I created it because I saw there was a lot of spamming going on and stuff like that. So it was about exposing. Yeah. And I've learned so much. But there's also experienced people going, hey, I didn't know that. Because of my curious mind, I'm asking questions and I'm just trying to find out, like, if you're making a will because of the seed phrase, like, so for those, you have a phrase if you're having your wallet to protect it, but you don't want to give it to your solicitor because that's being corrupt solicitors. You don't want to give it to your accountant, that's being corrupt accountants.
Right.
You can give it to your spouse, but she could be the one that does the dirt on you and take you for your money. So you have to, and just things, it's okay to ask these things. And they're the kind of questions that I'm asking. And then I have the pod fodder. So that's one that's helping existing podcasters or those looking to start. And it's to keep them in the game because, like with the media, it's all regurgitated lies. We see that all the time. Whereas podcasts are great because you can listen when you want, when it's convenient for you. I mean, I listen to most of them at by 2 if it's video. I can go up to by 3.5 if it's audio. And it's strange that you can comprehend that, but if you build it slow, you can. So I get through a lot of content, and you'll end up listening to brilliant people and learning more than the same stuff that's repeated all over the mainstream. They just put big pharma, where you learn natural stuff on a podcast, for example.
And you can gravitate towards things that interest you. So it narrows down your specific things that you want to get into, want to listen to. So I've had the pleasure of being able to talk to people across the globe that I normally wouldn't have the opportunity to because of this. So here you are, in Poland, real estate. I've talked to another gentleman in Poland just last week. So there are people that have experiences, happy mediums of success, stories to tell, compelling narratives, and great biographies simply because of what this medium has created and allowed us to speak with one another. And so you realize through this that your zip code is not just the pinnacle of success. The street you drive down, or your postal code that you guys may refer to it in Europe's part of the world. The world is much bigger than just what you stare at on a day-by-day basis. And it's very important to stay curious. And that's why you have Brain Gym. That's why you do podcasts, because your mind has to stay fresh and challenged to be able to always have your mind moving. And ultimately, when you do get older, you may thank yourself for reading and watching things because it can deteriorate before you know it, And so all those things will ultimately lead you to good places in life. And conversations like this are very compelling because I got to be honest with you, man, a Toastmaster is, entrepreneur and, coming from mowing lawns, it's a fascinating story, man. It really is.
I think the thing is never fear anything. It's like just...
Yes.
And be like, for example, podcasting, like sometimes people, I don't have time to do it. So you can listen to a podcast when you're driving. If you have to bring the children or on the way to work. When I'm earning, I'm listening to a podcast. If you're going to the gym, you can listen to a podcast. If you're going for a walk, double dip. When you're cooking, listen to a podcast. It's just, I call it double dipping. You can do two things at once.
Absolutely.
And what happens then is you just start, like, whether you're listening to a cooking one, natural, healthy food, there's so many things you can do, even if it's a humor thing. Because especially in the world we're living in, it's nice to listen to something that makes you laugh. And that's good as well, to lift your spirits.
And I think what it does, too, is it breaks down, entry barriers for people, too, right? Because a lot of times, you can be your own gatekeeper, so to speak, right? So, like, you have the opportunity to grow organically when you have compelling stories that you found that niche. So you do your podcasting and you help other podcasters. What exactly what do your services provide for people? Is it the production side? Is it the marketing side? Is it the entry level growth, or is it kind of a mixture of all of it?
Bit of everything that you just mentioned. It's like the main kind of ones for the podcasting kind of businesses, such as somebody that's starting off, I take them through from start to finish, do the whole lot, explain everything from between logo, websites, everything. Mm-hmm. Existing guys that are doing it and they just reach a plateau to say, hey, this is moving. So I because I'm kind of looking at it from different eyes, and sometimes I've even had people they started off with a coach, and then I got involved with them, and it's a different, because everyone's got their own kind of skill set and everything. Or I help people do a podcasting tour, and with the team, then the VA, because I've got the virtual assistance business that I'm partnered with. So with that, then we can help people with the editing. We can do websites. We can do like anything that you need a virtual assistant from. Like, how we're kind of different for that is sometimes people, like years ago, I was going to Fiverr and I was going to Upwork. Fiverr, sometimes they'd be okay, you're checking, you're spending a lot of time, and then usually they start off grand, and then they're like, or else they're not grand and you're just fighting to get your money back. And if you look at the hours that you spend just doing that, with Upwork, you get the screenshot And same thing, starts off okay, and then it's like, I'm seeing screenshots, but I don't really see much of a difference because I think, and there was somebody recently in America, they were on a high-end job, they were like $250,000 or something, but they were doing a few of them because remotely. And I'm convinced a lot of these people, they have a few jobs as well. So
for sure they do.
40 hours, you might be lucky to get 10. And the way we do it is we do it on packages. So we end up talking to the people. I go, what exactly are you looking for? We break it down. And we go, all right, we're doing this. So you're not watching over your shoulder to make sure we're doing it. At the start, there's always tweaks. There's always, expectations. Go, okay, look, let's do it. And then it just runs smoothly and you start working. And it's in our interest then to make sure that their listenership is growing and everything is working well, because whether it's sponsorship that they're getting in or listeners leads to more clients for whatever they're offering themselves. So we're always kind of looking at a win-win instead of let's get a client, let's look for the next one. It's like they recommend people what happens a lot is they increase the service. They start off putting their toe in the water and then they put their foot and then they dive head first. And it's like, it's a nice, that you're doing well when they do that. They kind of go all in and they're happy with the service. And it's mainly that I kind of like to treat every client like I like to be treated myself. I will not allow them to be abusive or anything. I like working with people that I respect and I like them as a person, because I mean, even in property, there's times I fired people because it was like one big client. He sucked my energy. Like, you work with somebody and it's just every single thing. And it's like you're spending 80% of your energy on someone and you fire them. And that's one thing. We don't want to work with people like that. It's
no doubt.
Why bother? You work with people that make you feel good. You're helping them. They're making an impact on the world, and it's kind of knock-on effect.
Oh, definitely. People will exhaust you, you know what I mean? And then, at the end of the day, like, what happens is, and this is a general statement to make, people will get so accustomed to a person that somehow they become convinced that you're supposed to be able to put up with certain behaviors, right? And then it just it's not like there's a viable solution that they're looking to work towards. It's that you've become their outlet for their rage, right? And so then you start looking like, every time I'm around you, you're somehow putting a weight on me. And to your point with that client, like, listen, dude, you had enough clients in your clientele base where you can make that decision. You're just like, honestly, you're not worth the time anymore, because like you said, man, I'm getting the life sucked out of me every single time I'm around you. And this is just not productive use of my time. So obviously you're very successful and you don't need me to talk about you and what you've accomplished. But for the listeners of this podcast, where can they find Roy Colin?
Go to roycolin.com. That's my name. That's COUGHLAN.com. Or if they're looking for the virtual assistant, go to va.world or braingym.fitness.
And I really appreciate your time. And I know you do multiple things, and for you to be able to carve out time out of your busy schedule is a very big honor and pleasure of mine on the T.R.O.N podcast. Roy, it's been an absolute pleasure, and I hope we have another follow-up show as well, too.
Well, I really appreciate it. And what I would do is encourage the listeners, because I've listened to some of your shows, make sure if you're on Spotify, there's 3 dots, you can give a 5-star rating. If you're on Apple, give a 5-star rating and a review. It makes a massive difference. If you're listening on the video, thumbs up, even a little comment, even a heart, because it helps the algorithms. And I think you're giving good value to the world. So
I appreciate
your listeners do that.
I really appreciate the kind words about that. And I can't thank you enough. And I appreciate your time and the kind words. Thank you.